Let's ask Keith Smith. He would have more insight than all here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. It sounds like Rivers, Lou, or Mike D'Antoni. Rivers wasn't in the conversation last time we talked to you. So how do you rank those three?
I would rank it probably that order, Rivers, Lou, and D'Antoni. I don't think Mike D'Antoni's system fits the current personnel, so unless you are making a commitment to making major roster changes, that one just never really made a lot of sense to me. I think Ty Lue and Doc Rivers, that's pretty close. I don't think you could really go wrong with either guy. They're both very good, and I think both of them could do quite well. I just think Doc Rivers has that longer history and track record of coming in and really kind of taking teams on that are already good and getting them kind of to that next level. Not necessarily all the way to finals contention. He did that with Boston. Was unable to do that with the Clippers. But I do think he's a guy players will respect. But it's not just because he's a players coach who's going to let them run the ship either.
Yeah, I mean, he won that title with Boston because he had three all-time players. I mean, would you say his losses with the Clippers were disappointments, or really did he not have the best teams?
No, definitely disappointments on a couple of those years for sure. They twice had 3-1 leads and were in positions where they should have been able to close those series out and move on. And both of those ultimately will go down as disappointments. Those Chris Paul, Blake Griffin teams were some pretty good teams that just never got over the hump. And then by the time it looked like they were finally maybe ready to take the mantle from the Spurs and Lakers in the Western Conference, the Warriors came to be, and that was the end of that run. And then this year, it looked like they had everything set up to make a deep title run, and they just couldn't get it done. Now, we don't know what they would have done had they played the Lakers, but the Lakers had played them well this season, so it would have been interesting to see how that had played out. But, once again, we didn't even get that opportunity.
When I look at this year's Clippers team, though, something just felt wrong the whole entire way. It was almost like similar to the Sixers, the expectations heading into it. Oh, look at all this talent. And just the whole year, it didn't really have that flow of a team. And I look at Paul George, who had a horrendous playoff run, Kawhi Leonard, who was bad in Game 7. So, for me, I'm not saying Doc Rivers had no part of that, but I just feel like there were other things involved where, I don't know how hard to criticize Doc Rivers for this specific current run.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to that is he was, as much as we kept hearing out of Philadelphia, this group is built for the playoffs. Where we're just playing the regular season to get through it. That was a common refrain out of Los Angeles was we just got to get through the regular season, get to the playoffs healthy. And they largely did so. They were about as healthy as you could be going into the playoffs, and they still didn't get it done. When you go up 3-1, and you lose again in that fashion, especially where in games 5, 6, and 7, they had double-digit leads in all three of those games and couldn't get any of them closed out. You have to start to look at the coach.
Obviously, it looks like anyway. I mean, unless somebody swoops in and takes both Lou or all three of these guys, the Sixers are going to go with one of those guys. Did you have an under-the-radar guy that's out there that you think would be an intriguing candidate?
I didn't. What's funny is it was, I think we all know their dream guy when they got rid of Brett Brown was going to be Jay Wright. And then Jay Wright was, no, I'm good. I'm staying where I'm at. And then after that, they kind of stuck to the names I expected maybe we would have heard by now about some mystery candidate that we didn't expect and those kind of things. But I think they're looking at it as we went with the longtime assistant last time out when we went with Brett Brown. And my belief and what I'm starting to understand through some conversations is they feel like we're too close now to being a contender to go with anybody except an established coach who can help get us over the hump. So that's why I think you're seeing them zone in on those three guys.
When you're listening to these NBA Finals get ready and all the Jimmy Butler talk, and he said, they wanted to control me in Philly, and I'm down here in the heat. Do you look at bigger problems than just the coach in Philadelphia?
I think there's a lot of blame to be thrown around in Philadelphia. I think it was Jimmy Butler has a high standard. We saw that in Minnesota where young guys didn't live up to that. Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins weren't where he wanted them to be. He went to Philadelphia. I think it was a lot of the same with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And I think Jimmy Butler expects guys to come in, be ready to work, not have to be told to do anything else, not necessarily that he doesn't want to lead, but he doesn't want to have to lead guys. I think he wants them to be able to lead themselves. And then, I think in both of those situations, you had coaches who were, I don't want to say they had lost their teams, but it wasn't certainly going well. It was headed in a direction that looked like it was headed towards a breakup. And I think Jimmy Butler really looked at it, read the room. And as much as, now it comes back to, well, did he want to be there? Did he not want to be there? I think once he had a chance to see, the Heat wanting what they're all about in Miami, that was done. At that point, there was nothing Philly was going to do to be able to change his mind. Now, they could have said, well, we're not doing a sign-in trade, but at that point, that just, doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Miami would have found a way to make it happen one way or another. And Philadelphia at least did well to get a good quality player, Josh Richardson, out of that.
Yeah, I really do miss watching Jimmy Butler play for the Sixers now that I'm watching this playoff run. And I want to get your thoughts on what Jimmy did so well, I guess this Heat team as a whole, against the Boston Celtics, who you covered.
What's funny is they were just who they are. That's what they've done throughout this playoff run. They've been the exact kind of team that they were all regular season. They execute at a high level. They play really well. Sometimes the shots don't fall, but they get a lot of really good shots out of their offensive system. I think the change that Eric Spoelstra made to go to Goran Dragic has been a good one. I think it's been an important one. I think going smaller in his opening lineup with Jay Crowder over either Kelly Olynyk or Myers Leonard has also been a big one. I think that's been really important for them. And then defensively, they have a lot of versatile guys who can play 2, 3, 4 positions that you can do all sorts of different stuff. And when you give Eric Spoelstra that kind of team and the kind of time you have during the playoffs with multiple days off, if you're finishing series early and at least a day in between games, he's going to come up with a scheme that's going to work because he's one of the very best coaches in the league.
LeBron going into his 10th NBA Finals here, 35 years old. Let me ask you, Keith, how many more years do you anticipate LeBron playing? Are we going to get 5 more years of LeBron, 2 more years of LeBron? I mean, what do you think about how many more years he has? Is this maybe his last best shot at a title?
I don't know. You could tell me 10, and at this point I'd say, all right, another decade, sure, right? I want to believe this is probably his last best shot because the Warriors are going to be back next year. You assume a couple of these other teams are going to look better than they did, and he'll be a year older, and Anthony Davis is very good, but how else do they, round out that roster and all those things? But then I look at it, and is LeBron slowing down? Absolutely. You can see signs of it on a pretty regular basis. But whatever he has lost athletically, and I don't know that it's I think he can still get to his peak athletic moments. I just don't think he can do that over and over and over again in a game. I think it's more of a, all right, I got to save it. I got to do it now. Now I'm going to go. But whatever he's lost there, he's more than gained in his basketball intelligence and his IQ. And he was already near the top end of the spectrum with that already. Now it's just, he's going to pick everything apart. There's no defense you can show him that he hasn't seen. Maybe you catch him off guard for a play or two, but once he sees it a couple plays, he's going to diagnose it, and you're going to, ultimately end up with him probably getting a pretty good look. So, I don't know how much longer we get this. I'm going to guess it's somewhere in the 3 to 5 year range that he's still, a top 2 or 3 player on a very good team.
Yeah, I think it's amazing the fact that he's done when they says 10th, and you're just like, whoa. Let's get your perspective on this series because the Heat are a 5 seed. They're the biggest underdog since those Nets teams that played the Lakers back in 2000, 2001. Do you look at this as a gigantic underdog facing the Lakers, or is it closer than that?
Yeah, I think it's closer than that. This Heat team is giving me very much 2004 Detroit Pistons vibes, where it's the sum is whole, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I think it is, when you really look at them, they know who they are. They know what they want to do. They know how they want to play. And I'm still picking the Lakers to win, but I think the Heat are going to keep this thing close. I think they're going to make the Lakers earn it. And I think one of the other things is the Lakers haven't been overly challenged yet in this playoffs. I know they lost their first game in their first couple series, but then they came back and blew the doors off Portland, and then Houston. They really, the Nuggets are tough, but they were able to get the Nuggets done, relatively quickly. I think you're going to see this one be a really good, tight battle, and that's just, a lot of respect for this Miami team as a group.
What is it if LeBron loses this series? What does that mean?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm starting to see a lot of, if LeBron loses, this is a huge black mark on his legacy and those kind of things. And
they are a huge betting favorite in this series. So, I mean, it would be a pretty disappointing loss.
Yeah, that from that standpoint, I completely understand. It's such a weird year in the NBA that I don't know that you can really say anything is a massive surprise. I mean, Miami's in the finals, and I don't know anybody other than the most ardent of Heat fans who picked that. I think most people were, it's going to be Milwaukee or Toronto, and you're at a few, Boston's thrown in there. I don't remember anybody saying the Heat. And then, so now you're, down to it. And I wouldn't want to, knock him too much, because what's sad about that is the same people who are saying, well, it's a huge black mark for LeBron if he doesn't, get this one, are also saying, yeah, but if he wins it, it's this weird bubble year and it's, not a real championship. You can't have it both ways. Either it's a real championship or it's not. Make up your mind, and then we can have a discussion from there.
He's Keith Smith tonight, the NBA Finals right here on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, he, like all guests, up here via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Follow him at Keith Smith NBA for this NBA Finals. Should be a good one. Heat and Lakers. Keith, take care, pal.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'll stay safe, you and yours.
All right, you do the same. And, of course, we'll talk to Keith throughout these NBA Finals. And then it'll be interesting to find out what's next for the NBA after this season is over. I mean, you might get, if you get a sweep here, you might only get a week left of basketball. And then what? Normally the NBA season's about ready to start up right around the 14th, 15th.